You are born, and someone is already holding you. Not just your mother, not just your father, everyone. For the first 300,000 years of human existence, raising a child was never a private act. It was a village project, a tribal responsibility, a biological arrangement so deeply wired into your ancestors' bodies that modern parenting, isolated, nuclear, anxious, would have looked to them like a form of slow cruelty. This is the story of how your species actually raised its young, and it will change how you see every choice you make today. Before the first farm was ever planted, before the first wall was ever built, your ancestors lived in small, mobile bands of roughly 25 to 50 people. Anthropologist Kim Hill spent decades studying the ache of Paraguay, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies, and what he found upended almost everything we thought we knew about early childhood. In these groups, a child was not raised by two parents. A child was raised by an average of 14 adults simultaneously. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated band members. All of them touched the child, fed the child, soothed the child, constantly, without being asked. There is a word for this. Anthropologists call it alloparenting. Allo, from the Greek, meaning other parenting, the raising of offspring by individuals who are not the biological mother or father. And in your ancestors' world, it was not a backup system. It was the primary system. Your body still remembers this. When a stranger smiles at your infant on a bus and the infant smiles back, that is 300,000 years of wiring activating. Your baby is not being naive. Your baby is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do, recruiting caregivers. So what did a typical early childhood actually look like? Let's reconstruct it. You are born in a small camp, probably during the warmer months, when food is plentiful enough that your mother can afford the caloric cost of labor. The birth is attended by experienced women in the group. Older mothers, grandmothers, women who have seen dozens of births. There are no hospitals, no sterile rooms, no isolation. The moment you arrive, hands reach for you. You are passed, examined, held, smelled. You are a shared arrival. For the first 2 to 3 years of your life, you are almost never put down. Anthropologist Mel Konner, in his landmark 1976 study of the Kungsan people of the Kalahari, documented that infants were held or carried in skin-to-skin contact for roughly 90% of daylight hours. 90%. Not in a carrier strapped to a single adult. Passed between adults, always warm, always in contact with a human body. When you cried, someone responded within seconds, not minutes, seconds. Konner found that the average response time to infant distress among the Kung was under 10 seconds. The concept of letting a baby cry it out did not exist because there was no reason to let it exist. There were always enough arms. You were breastfed for an average of 3 to 4 years, not weeks, not months, years. Skeletal isotope analysis of ancient remains, including sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa, one of the richest early human archaeological sites ever excavated, confirms extended nursing well past what modern Western culture would consider normal. This was not just nutrition. It was immune system calibration, gut microbiome seeding, a hormonal conversation between mother and child that shaped brain architecture in ways scientists are still mapping. But here is where it gets genuinely surprising. Your mother was not your only source of milk. In many hunter-gatherer societies, documented by anthropologists, women nursed each other's children, not as an emergency measure, as a routine act of communal care. Wiessner, who spent over 40 years studying the Kungsan, documented cross-nursing as a normal, unremarkable feature of band life. If your mother was hunting or ill or needed rest, another nursing woman simply fed you. Your body did not distinguish. Your immune system received antibodies from multiple women. Your microbiome was seeded by multiple bodies. You were, in a very literal biological sense, a child of the group. Fathers were present too, but in a way that would surprise most modern assumptions. Among the Aka people of Central Africa, studied extensively by anthropologist Barry Hewlett, fathers hold their infants more than in any other documented society on Earth. AKA fathers are within arm's reach of their infants for more than half of each day. They soothe, carry, play, and yes, in rare cases, even offer their nipples for comfort nursing, a behavior documented nowhere else and still not fully understood. The AKA overturn every assumption that paternal involvement is a modern invention or a cultural luxury. Your male ancestors were not absent. They were present in ways that would embarrass the average contemporary father. Now consider what childhood learning looked like. There was no school. There was no separation of children from adult life. Children in hunter-gatherer societies were embedded in the full texture of adult activity from the earliest age. They watched butchering. They watched fire-making. They handled tools, real tools, not toy versions, from around age 3. Peter Gray, a developmental psychologist at Boston College, has studied play in hunter-gatherer children extensively, and what he found is that children in these societies engaged in what he calls self-directed free play for the majority of their waking hours. Not organized, not supervised, not optimized, just free. Children of mixed ages together, a 6-year-old alongside a 12-year-old alongside a 4-year-old, playing at the edge of adult life, absorbing skills through observation and imitation and joyful repetition. There was no homework. There were no grades. There was no anxiety about whether your child was hitting milestones on schedule, because the milestones were visible and shared and embedded in daily life. You learned to track animals because you followed the hunters. You learned to identify edible plants because you walked with the gatherers. You learned to read social dynamics because you were never removed from the social group. You were in it, always, watching, absorbing, becoming. Discipline looked different too. Physical punishment of children was extraordinarily rare in documented hunter-gatherer societies. Anthropologist David Lancy, who spent decades compiling cross-cultural research on childhood in his book, The Anthropology of Childhood, found that the dominant mode of correction among mobile forager bands was not punishment, it was indirection. A child who misbehaved was gently redirected, teased, lightly, distracted. Older children modeled the correct behavior. Adults rarely raised their voices. They rarely needed to, because children were never isolated from adult life long enough to become bored, frustrated, or lost. Misbehavior is, in many ways, a symptom of disconnection, and disconnection was almost impossible when you were always inside the group. Here is the counterintuitive twist. Agriculture ruined childhood. When your ancestors settled, when they built permanent structures and began farming, children became something they had never been before: economic units. On a farm, a child's labor had direct value. Children as young as 5 were assigned tasks: weeding, herding, carrying water, watching younger siblings so adults could work the fields. Playtime collapsed. Mixed-age free roaming disappeared. The intimate web of alloparental care fractured, because in settled agricultural communities, nuclear family units began to replace communal bands. Walls went up. Households became separate. For the first time in human history, a mother was expected to raise her child largely alone, or with a single partner, inside a fixed dwelling without the constant living network of aunts, grandmothers, and band members that evolution had designed her to rely on. The isolation you feel as a modern parent, that crushing, irrational sense that you should be able to do this by yourself, is not weakness. It is a biological system running in conditions it was never built for. You were designed to have 14 people helping you. You were designed to hand your baby to a grandmother in sleep. You were designed to have older children teaching younger ones while you foraged. The nuclear family is not the natural unit of child rearing. The band is. The village is. The web of people who all know your child's name and hold them without being asked. That is what your nervous system is still waiting for. You are not failing at parenting. You are trying to do a communal act alone. You are born, and someone is already holding you. But in your ancestors' world, there were always 10 more people right behind them, arms already open, ready to take a turn. That is what it meant to raise a human child. For 300,000 years, it took all of you.